Warning: the following story contains descriptions of graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. New Bedford, Massachusetts, a city steeped in history, but harboring a dark secret. In the late 1980s, a predator stalked the streets, preying on the most vulnerable. His victims, women on the margins, struggling with addiction, fighting for survival. He became known as the New Bedford Highway Killer, a phantom who vanished as quickly as he struck. 9 women found brutally murdered, their bodies discarded like trash along the desolate highways that ring the city. 2 more vanished without a trace. The fear that gripped the community was palpable. Who was this monster, and how could he be stopped? The victims were all women battling addiction, forced into sex work to survive. Their names, their faces etched into the city's memory. The killer was a ghost, leaving little to no trace, no witnesses, no DNA, no discernible pattern beyond the victims themselves. The police were baffled and the community was terrified. The fear spread like wildfire. Women were afraid to walk alone at night. The city, once vibrant, was shrouded in a pall of fear. Over the years, there have been numerous suspects, but no definitive answers. Did the killer operate alone? Was he a local or someone passing through? The questions remain unanswered, haunting the city to this day. This is the case of the New Bedford Highway Killer. The New Bedford Highway Killer is an unidentified serial killer responsible for the deaths of at least 9 women and the disappearances of 2 additional women in New Bedford, Massachusetts between March 1988 and April 1989. The killer is also suspected to have assaulted numerous other women. All the killer's victims were known sex workers or had struggles with addiction. While the victims were taken from the New Bedford area, they were all found in different surrounding towns, including Dartmouth, Freetown and Westport, along Massachusetts Route 140. Robin Lynn Rhodes, age 29, was found on March 28, 1989, along Massachusetts Route 140 southbound in Freetown by a search dog. She is believed to have gone missing sometime in March or April 1988. Rhodes had previously dated suspect Kenneth Ponte. While she was never involved in prostitution, she knew many of the other victims and was friends with victim Mary Rose Santos. Rochelle Clifford Dobirala, age 28, of Falmouth, disappeared sometime during late April 1988. Her body was found on December 10, 1988, in a gravel pit along Reed Road beneath a tree grove, about 2 miles from Interstate 195, by people riding in ATVs. She was partially clothed and had been beaten to death. She had dated and stayed at the home of suspect Kenneth Ponte, who was arrested for her murder. This was the only time charges were brought in this case. Rochelle had testified against another man who had raped her, but he is not suspected in this case. She was last seen with victim Nancy Pavia's boyfriend, an ex-convict. He was cleared in both deaths and is not a suspect. Deborah Lynn McConnell, age 25, of Newport, was last seen sometime in May of 1988 by her father after the funeral of her mother at the local cemetery. She is believed to have been the 3rd victim. Her body was found on December 1st, 1988, off Massachusetts Route 140, northbound in Freetown, through a cadaver search dog. She was found nude with a bra wrapped around her neck. Deborah Medeiros, age 29, of Fall River, was last seen by her boyfriend in New Bedford after a fight and was reported missing on May 27, 1988. She was the first of the bodies found and was identified in December of 1988. Her body was found on July 3rd by a woman who went to relieve herself in the woods on the side of the road on Massachusetts Route 140. Her remains were severely decomposed, with her body positioned on her back with her feet pointed towards the highway. Her cause of death was strangulation. She had a bra wrapped around her neck. Her boyfriend was ruled out as a suspect. Christina Monteiro, age 19, was last seen sometime in May 1988 and has not been heard from since. Marilyn Cardoza Roberts, age 34, was last seen sometime in June 1988 and has not been heard from since. She was reported missing in December of 1988, and she was neighbors with Montero. Nancy Lee Paiva, age 36, of New Bedford, was last seen walking home from a bar called Whispers Pub on July 7, 1988, after a reported fight with her boyfriend in South End on the early hours of the morning. Her nude body was discovered beside Interstate 195 in Dartmouth on July 30, 1988, by two men who were riding motorcycles. Her body was found in the same position as Deborah Medeiros, on her back with her feet pointing towards the highway. Nancy's cause of death was also believed to be strangulation. Her boyfriend is not a suspect in her death. Deborah Greenlaw DeMello, age 35, was last seen in New Bedford on July 11, 1988. Her body was found off the eastbound Reed Road ramp off Interstate 195 by a state highway crew on November 8, 1988. Deborah's nude body was in the area with trees with her clothing strewn in the branches. She was found with some belongings of another victim, Nancy Paiva. Marie Rose Santos, age 26, of New Bedford, was dropped off on July 16, 1988 by her husband, with whom she had recently reconciled, near the downtown bus station, and last seen dancing at the old Quarterback Lounge 5 hours later. Santos's nude body was found with a beer bottle on March 31, 1989, along Massachusetts Route 88 in Westport by two boys. Suspect Kenneth Ponte had represented Santos in a civil case and helped her husband make flyers after her disappearance. Sandra Botello, age 24, reportedly left her apartment on August 11, 1988 at 11 p.m. and never returned. She was the final body found, located in the woods along Interstate 195 in Marion on April 24, 1989. Her body was nude and reportedly was folded into a fetal position. Dawn Mendez, age 25, was last seen in New Bedford on September 4, 1988, walking from her apartment to a family christening party. Her body was found on November 29, 1988, on the westbound Reed ramp off Interstate 195 by a search dog. There were mostly skeletal remains, but her hand was able to yield a fingerprint, which led to her being identified. These are the faces of the victims of the New Bedford Highway Killer. Their stories are a stark reminder of the tragedy and the ongoing search for justice. On a seemingly ordinary day, February 2, 2009, Christine Ross and her dog Ruka set out for a walk on the trails of Albuquerque's west side. What began as a simple outing would soon unravel a dark and haunting mystery that shook the community to its core. As Ruka roamed the earthen path, she had discovered something unsettling, a large bone protruding from the ground. Intrigued and uneasy, Christine snapped a photo and texted her sister, a registered nurse, for advice. The response was chilling. That bone, it seemed, resembled a human femur. Christine immediately contacted the Albuquerque Police Department. Within hours, forensic teams arrived, and it was confirmed the bone was indeed human. What followed was a grim discovery. Over the next few weeks, detectives unearthed skeletal remains of 11 women and one unborn child, all buried in makeshift graves. Among the victims were 10 women: Monica Calendarium, Victoria Chavez, Virginia Cloven, Selania Edwards, Cinnamon Elks, Doreen Marquez, Julie Nieto, Veronica Romero, Evelyn Salazar, and Michelle Valdez. Each had ties to drugs and prostitution, a common thread woven through their tragic lives. But the 11th victim, Jamie Barella, stood apart with no links to these activities. Through meticulous investigation, the Office of the Medical Investigator identified Selania Edwards on November 13, 2009. Missing since 2003, Selania was classified as an endangered runaway, last seen in the company of other young women in Colorado. At just 15 years old, her disappearance was a painful reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows. DNA evidence later revealed the identities of Virginia Cloven and Evelyn Salazar, on November 17, 2009. Both women from the Albuquerque area, also missing since 2004. The investigation continued, leading to the heartbreaking identification of Jamie Barella on January 26, 2010. She had vanished alongside her cousin Evelyn on their way to the park. Both young lives extinguished far too soon. Together we can help bring justice to these victims and their families. Thank you for joining us in uncovering this tragic chapter in Albuquerque's history. Well, until next time, stay safe and stay aware. Thank you.